Hello, my name is Ashley Williamson and I'm doing my project on Romare Bearden. Romare Bearden was an African American artist whose main focus of his art was to show the African American life during the times that he was alive. He was around during the Harlem Renaissance, he was around during the Civil Rights Movement, and he was a big activist. Later on in his life, he created the Romare Bearden, or I just pronounced his name wrong. I am so sorry. Uh, Romare Bearden Foundation to help educate and train young artists. A famous quote of his is or was that it is not my aim to paint about the Negro in America in terms of propaganda. It is precisely my awareness of distortion required of the polemicist that has caused me to paint the life of my people as I know it as passionately and passionately as Bruegel painted the life of the Flemish people of his day. He had a unique perspective, heightened skills at expression, only begins to consider his genius. He had such an eye for color and taking things that you would not expect to go together to put them together in these beautiful collages. And he would take things from magazines, from photographs, and he would just make things that make sense when you look at them, but it was crazy to think how could somebody see a picture from one magazine, see a picture in another magazine, put them together, or cut them up, put them together, and then boom, you have this gorgeous piece of art that symbolizes hardship, heart, and times of struggle for African Americans. It's so crazy to me. So one of his paintings is The Morning of the Rooster. This is through his style of lithograph, which he used a lot through his collages, where he would take different textures and he would experiment with different colors and bringing colors that you wouldn't expect to go together and in order to depict a picture. Another thing that he was famous for was doing prints, and one of his subjects that was very popular around his time was jazz bands, because he lived in Harlem at the time of the Harlem Renaissance, and so jazz bands were everywhere, and he would take a jazz band that he would see on the street, that he would see in clubs and stuff like that, and he would put them into these abstract paintings and collages and prints. And sometimes he wouldn't even be a jazz band. Sometimes he would do folk bands. Sometimes he would do it wasn't just particularly this one subject, which I found completely fascinating. And his eye for color was just incredible, because you don't think about, especially in this painting, yellow and blue and red and green, and putting these like muddier colors and putting them together to create this fun, lively painting. Like you can imagine like what these guys are playing, and and you can imagine dancing to it and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. Something that he wasn't as well known for, but he still did, was his oil paintings and his watercolor paintings. This is an example of life in the South for a lot of African Americans, especially in the 1930s and 40s, where they were still doing sharecropping and they were still picking cotton, even though technically slavery was abolished, but they were still working on these farms, and there was still a lot of this type of work for them being, and they're still going through this work that was tireless. And it's really cool just seeing this one painting that it's so prevalent that African Americans were his piece, and he used, each one looks different, each person looks different, and each style of his paintings, although you can still recognize it as his because of his the brightly colors, the graphics and stuff like that, and how this still kind of looks like a collage, but it's painting, and it's because of the harsh lines, because of the abstract shapes and stuff like that. So I just thought that was really cool. And then something that he was known for, especially in 1969, was this Times Magazine cover that he created. And I think it's so cool to think about how he would look in magazines and he would take these pictures and just put them together. And although when you look at them separately, you wouldn't think like those would make sense together, but it makes sense. And it's just really cool seeing those different images just make sense, especially for the time and stuff like that. Um, this one's a kind of cool painting that he has, or that is under his belt. Um, it's called the piano lesson, also known as the homage to Mary Lou. Obviously, I mean that's the that's the title of it. But in this collage, Bearden's use of patterns versus flat areas of color and his exploration of interior space call to mind the art of Henri Matisse. I love how you can still see his style in this painting, and he still uses his bright colors, he still uses the abstract shapes, and how it still looks like his style of collages and lithographs and stuff like that, but it's sometimes paint, and it's like this varying of textures and colors that really just, you can tell this is his. Like it's not difficult to tell whose painting this is. And then something that he wasn't as well known for, but he was well known for his activism. And I found this I guess political cartoon that I don't think a lot of people know about, because I saw it in I saw it from the Susquehanna, I think is what it's called, art museum, where they were doing like a couple of these things, or they were showing off a couple of his paintings at an event, and this was something that they had, and I was like, See, normally with what we associate with Romare Bearden is his his bright colors and his abstract pieces, and or like in collages and stuff like that. I thought this one just stood out the most because this is a political cartoon. He's not known for being a journalist. He's not known for being in newspapers and writing about things. But it's interesting that he was able to break away from his normal painting, his normal printmaking and stuff like that, to make this political cartoon about that says a lot of things. I mean, they have the Trail of Tears, they have protesters, they have African Americans, and it's almost like the African Americans are always going to be in the background when it comes to any political issue. It's like the background, it's like the African Americans are never prioritized, and they're just watching as people are fighting for their rights and are fighting for, working rights and stuff like that. But what about them? Because they're not protesting, they're only watching, and they only have the ability to watch, which is so crazy to me. So that was my presentation on Romare Bearden. Thank you for listening.